Good day, everyone. So we are the Group 7 reporters. So before I start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Cristalmi Torres, together with my group mates, Julie Darunday, Elmera Sanica, Ina Cagas, and Michelle Sagihon. So we have here a game called Word Scramble. So I know that we are all familiar sa word scramble kay ang mga nang unang report kay napod sila game mga ingani. So the mechanics are arrange the scrambled letters to form a word. Second, if you want to answer, just raise your hand and state your family name. So let's play the game. So who wants to answer? Yes, it is agricultural development. Second, it is the Russian experience. Third is the economic system. Fourth is the third world poverty. Yes, farmers organizations. So our topic for today is all about the agricultural development. But before we start discussing, I would like to read the objectives first. So at the end of the lesson, students will be able to explain the importance of agricultural development to economic development. Second, differentiate agricultural development in rich countries from the less developed countries. And last, identify the possibilities for agricultural development. So, ours is a hungry world. About 40 million people, mostly children, die every year of hunger and malnutrition. So, because of food shortages are widespread in the less developed countries, particularly in our country, which is part of Asia, we are experiencing the lack of foods, no, and kada year ay kada day by day na ay mamatay because of malnutrition and hunger. And Africa and Latin America. So in Africa, we all know that Africa is part of the less developed countries. They are poor economy sa ilahang lugar. And also in Latin America. So based on United Nations report, by the end of 2000, there would be 65 countries of the third world which could not feed their people, and Africa would be the hardest hit. So as what I said earlier, Africa is poor nga country. So if you watch documentaries about Africa, kana makita mo adto na ang ilahang country kay kuan pobre, way ang mga bata kay mga malnourished because lack of foods. The present population of the world is 4.5 billion. It has been pointed out that we are not producing successful farmers. However, technical efficiency is not the root cause of low agricultural poverty in the third world countries. There are pervasive institutional defects in agriculture that greatly contribute to the inefficiency of the farmers. So, one example is if the farmers do not own lands they are cultivating. So, I know that we are all familiar or know the meaning of cultivating. So, di na naman nahato i-explain. It is true as claimed by experts that the resources of the earth, if fully developed and properly utilized, can feed the population of the world and now in the future. So, ang mga tao kay ba mo kuan sa kanang mga resources sa ato ang earth, kay ba sila kanang ilang ampingan. So there's tendency or possibility nga in the future there are no children nga mamatay day by day or every year because of hunger and malnutrition. So the main problem is that most of the resources belong to few families in the less developed countries. And in the global society, the very few rich nations consume most of the goods and services. So, in the case of United States, it consumes more than 40% of the total goods and services of world GNP. Thus, the problem is not only food shortage brought about by low productivity, but also the irrational consumption of the rich countries. In a free and capitalist society, there is no law which prohibits a rich man from buying the most expensive food for his dogs. However, rich individuals have a social responsibility towards the poor in society. And this chapter represents the role of agriculture in economic development of agriculture, farmers' organizations, agrarian reform, and other agricultural policies emphasizes on the effects of agricultural development on the whole national economy. So, history of agriculture. The early primitive people did not produce foods, they just obtained this through hunting and fishing. So before, people are not into planting, they are just hunting in the forest just to have foods. So the word agriculture derived from the Latin word agricultura, which means field cultivation. So the discovery of agriculture by man was one of the most crucial phenomena towards human development. So when we say crucial, it is the important or mansa ang mahalaga nga important mansa nga nahitabo before sa pag-discover sa agriculture, because when the man discovered the agriculture, it changed everything. The way they provide food for themselves na change because na-discover nila how to have foods nga di na sila mag-hunting, mag-plants na naman sila. So, people were no longer like wild animals roaming in the wilderness looking for food. So, just what sa hangin inyong ganiha, di na sila mag-hunting sa mga kanang forest o asa man na sila modong para makaka-food. Kaya na-discover nila on how to plant crops. Instead of completely depending on the bounties of nature. So, nagkuha na sila sa nature. For their physical survival, they began to plant crops and raise animals for food. So the beginning of agricultural practices were first discovered in Southeast Asia, Middle East, Central and South America. Archaeological findings show that men in the Middle East raised wheat and barley around 6000 BC. One of the first true agricultural villages was discovered in the hills of Iraq, and now this village is called Jarmo. So, na-discover ang agriculture sa Iraq, karon gitawag na si Jang Jarmo or Harmo. It was a permanent community with mud houses built on stone foundations. Next, excavations show that people lived in the village about 4750 BC. Aside from wheat and barley, they raised goats, pigs, sheep, and cattle. So before, kanang wala day sila nag-raise sa mga katong wheat and barley. Naghuan pa sila animals. Nagbuhi sila animals like goats, pigs, sheep, and cattle. Also, a great variety of tools, ornaments, and other objects were unearthed. Some of these came from other regions, which proved that the people had contacts with the outside world. So sa una, kananaan na din ang mga murag kana exchange of products nga nahitabo sa mga countries. So according to Jarmo, the knowledge and practice of agriculture spread out to many other parts of the Middle East, then to Asia, Europe, and the rest of the world. So, sa discovery of agriculture, ning spread siya in other countries. So, the way ang people nga huan nagkatag-katag na ang knowledge on how to plant or how to have food nga di na maghunt sa forest. The early development of agriculture did not only create stable societies but also economic, social, political, cultural, and religious institutions. So eventually, civilizations gradually developed in the different parts of the world. So, mauna to nga ang knowledge about agriculture is spread in sa kanang kalilaing nasod. Mo na nga mauto nga ang laing countries na naana sila knowledge about sa agriculture. Problems of agriculture. So, first, it is a risky business because natural calamities can easily destroy agricultural investments. So, example of natural calamities, it is the mga bagyo and mga buhawi. And so, even excellent agricultural development can be wiped out. As a protection for the investments of the small farmers, a government insurance corporation was organized a few years ago, but only rice and corn are insurable under certain conditions. So, if ang mga natanom sa mga farmers, mahuan sila sa mga natural calamity, ang tagaan ng insurance ana kadturang mga tanom nga rice and corn ang ilahang mahuan na protectionan matagaan og insurance. Other problems are financing, production, processing, and marketing. So, we all know that the problems of farmers, almost sa mga farmers kay kanang kwarta, because if you don't have money, kanang what sila ikapalit sa mga kanang kailangan sa kanang ilang farms, like kanang mga chemicals, mga fertilizers, asa man sila if they don't have enough money, no? So lisod nga kanang what tay kwarta ka, what tay ikapamalit na para pampatambok or kuan sa ato ang mga plants. So the inputs of farming are expensive, like fertilizers, chemicals, tools, and machines. So yes, just like now na kanang ang abono daw is 2,000 kapin man talito. So mahal na ang mga pamalito nun. Ang ending ano ba sa kanang kuan is mahal ang mga chemicals, fertilizers, nga na. And then ang humay is barato ra inig palito no sa mga market. So murag unfair na. So to be able to adopt better methods of farming as introduced by Western specialists, farmers need more funds for the necessary inputs. So, farmers, kanang nag-needed sila o kanang more funds para sa ilahang products, ilahang mga tanom para ilahang mapalago. Most farmers in the less developed countries are poor. Kay less developed countries, jud, may expect na mga pobre pod ang mga namoy jud. Kay pobre man pod ilahang country, so pobre pug na puyo, pero napay mga dato no nga mga gahaman sa mga power. So their only option is to borrow money in order to finance their farm production. It is not easy for them to secure loans from financial institutions due to collateral requirements. Yes, mga kabantay ko sa mga farmers kanang mangutang sila og kanang abono sa kanang mga tinda-tindahan. Kay wa man sila ika-finance, sila ikabayad, sila ikapalit, no? Maong ang exchange ana is murag ag kanang ilaha pong murag ilang humay is makuan kay maoy ibayad sa ilahang gikuha ang mga fertilizer. So exchange sila. They can get loans from the government but these are limited. And the processing of loans usually takes time. Yes, umukha kag loan, it takes time. Diyan na daghan man nag-process nga kung anon sundon. Many of poor farmers forced to borrow money from the loan sharks and thus further depresses their miserable economic conditions. So farmers are willing to improve their production techniques if there is proper support from the government. It is not good policy to stimulate farmers to produce more if there is no market for their crops. Their product serves only the village consumption, yes. So ang farmers, willing sila nga i-improve ang ilahang agriculture, but our government kanang wa sila lack of support ng government sa Philippines, no? Kay murag wa sila yung mga actions ba nga pamahalo ng mga humay, mga ingana. Barato pagpalit ang humay, but og kanang humay ila nang galingon, mahimo na ng bugas, mahal na kayo ang bugas. So murag na unfair treatment, no? Kay it is not good policy to stimulate farmers to produce more if there is no market for their crops. Murag ang mga farmers sakit sa buot nila nga ang ilahang kahago is murag ara. So we have to kuan sa mga farmers. We have to support them because if wala sila, wala sadta, patay tayo. Kasi they are producing foods, our foods. Kitang mga tapuan no, dito magtanom-tanom. No, wajita. So we have to love, respect our farmers, no? Because my father is a farmer, my grandfather is a farmer, so maluwi ko nila. It is noted that the prices of farm products are not stable. When these are in their peak season, their prices go down, and when they are out of season, their prices go up. Such extreme price fluctuations could have been stabilized if there were adequate storage and processing facilities. For instance, fishery products can be kept in cold storage. Fruits and vegetables can be processed into canned goods. Such practice can reduce the problems of surpluses and shortages of farm products, but prices will be stabilized for the good of the farmers and the consumers. Yes, kanang kabantay mo if you watch news sa mga TV, ang prices sa mga products are not stable. Mo mahal, ni kaugma mo barato gani, mo mahal na sa. There's no stable, no. Was day permanent na price kana mag-usog-usog. Dapat ni mag-usog-usog. Char. So we have to kuan sa ating mga farmers because farmers kanang naan nila kuan sila na produce at ang mga foods. We have to support them. Government should support our farmers. Agriculture, they have to kuan kanang tagaag funds nga kuan para matabangan nila mga farmers, no, para ma-inspire sa mga farmers di sila mawalan ng pag-asa sa ilang kinabuhi. Kay mo sa mga farmers kay naglisod ba po na sila, like mo, just like what I said earlier nga mo borrow pa sila og money in order to finance their farm production. Og muhuan pug ka sa kanang mga mo borrow ka napoy interest, so asa naman sila? So we have to respect our farmers. So I guess that is.
Good day, everyone. I hope you have a great day. So, for the next topic, we will jump into the agricultural development in poor countries. Okay. So, poor countries are primarily agricultural economies. Their national incomes come from the agricultural sector. So, most of their peoples are employed in agriculture. So the said nations depend on raw materials and very few crops for exports to the industrial countries. So, say other terms or words for the poor countries. So we have the third world countries or the less developed countries. So we say agricultural sector, it is more on agricultural farming. So most of their peoples are employed in agriculture. So in the poor countries, they depend on the raw materials, like for example, mga seeds, mga crops, or whatsoever, no, raising animals, and then they exports to the industrial countries like in Western Europe, in or in the Western countries, in United States, and so on. So next, we have in less developed countries, agricultural resources are not only underutilized but also inefficiency developed due to deficiency in capital, technology, and management. So meaning to say, hindi mahusay ang paggamit no sa mga agricultural resources, like for example mga agricultural equipment, mga tools no in farming, and then kakulangan sa capital, technology, and management. So maunay mga factors no sa poor countries, mo mga rason, and as a result agricultural productivity is extremely low. So, more often than not, their claims to higher agricultural output has been due to the cultivation of more land areas. Nevertheless, with the introduction to or of better techniques of production and the high yielding varieties, some agricultural countries have improved their productivity. And as what I have said earlier, no, because of the introduction of better techniques of production, the agricultural countries improve their productivity. So the agricultural production in Asia has been slightly better. So in Africa, because of mga disasters like mga floods, droughts, mga pests, wars, people are starving. So the helpless victims of hunger are mostly children. No, as we have observed no sa atong makitaan sa mga pictures, sa atong makitaan sa mga internet, so kasagaran yun mga African people, no, luoy kaayo ang mga children, mga malnourished, mga gipanggutom gid sila tungod sa mga disasters, no? They were starving. And also, no, ang mga African people, especially itong mga children, they were being affected by the disaster, by the wars, no? They were being affected by those problems in Africa sa ilahang mga na-experience. Since Africa is one of the poor countries, no? They were belong to the third world countries. So by that, they are too weak to whisper their hunger, but their eyes vividly convey their sufferings and a forthcoming death. So the land gives very little to people who derive their incomes from it. So they are poor. It is even worse if the land does not belong to them. So this is the predicament of agriculture workers in Latin America. Basically, no, this is one of the predicament or problema or suliranin sa mga agriculture workers in Brazil, in Peru, and whatsoever no, na belongs sa Latin America. So, there are many big plantations, and these are owned mostly by the local elite and multinational corporations. So we say local elite, they are people who are connected to the government apparatus. And then, kaning mga multinational corporation, mga dagko na ni mga korporasyon, no? Okay. Based on Food and Agriculture Organization report, 1.3% of the landlords own 71.6% of the entire agricultural area. So imagine no, dako ang ilahang maon sa mga landlords when it comes to agricultural area. So most farm workers are mere seasonal workers. When we say mere seasonal workers, muna sila mga for example no, mga fruit pickers, mga sa mango season. So ang mga workers no, kanang mga fruit pickers, this starts in, so kaning pag-harvest sa mangga, di ba, March and ends in June, di ba? So, every seasonal na ni silang kaning mga workers. So most of the time, they are out of work. So they go to the big cities in Latin America to look for jobs. So kaning mga seasonal workers, no, mudong ni sila sa laing places aron mangita og laing trabaho kay di man siya permanent. Di man permanent di ilang mga trabaho sa mga seasonal workers kay every season naman ni sila. So some few third world countries have been able to improve their agriculture through land reform. When say land reform, no, it involves the changing of laws, regulations, and regarding land ownership and through the cooperatives. Muni ang nakapa-improve sa third world countries. However, such economic gains have been rendered insignificant because of inflation and population explosion. So for example, in India has recently attained food self-sufficiency, but thousands of its people are hungry. No, bisan pa if naa sila'y self-sufficiency, but still, people are still hungry. So another thing, the Philippines has become a rice exporter since 1976, but the poor consumers who buy rice have not been benefited. So even though ang Pilipinas may maoy rice exporter no since 1976, pero wala naka-benefit ang mga Filipino consumers because the price of rice has not stopped increasing because of the prices of the fertilizers and other farm inputs which are made by multinationals keep on increasing. So kaning mga farm inputs mooni ang like for example mga seeds, mga pesticides. So tungod ani ni mahal ang presyo sa mga for example mga bugas. So mahal gyud tungod sa mga pesticides nga gamiton. So usa may ato ang ngunay rason, di ba? Kanang mga fertilizers nga mao man ay kinahanglan gyud aron ta maka-produce tag more rice. And then even the Filipino farmers are still poor, thus it has been claimed by expert observers that only the multinational corporations and their representatives in the Philippines reap the benefits of development in the agricultural sector. Meaning to say, ang mga dagkong tawo or mga multinational corporations, mura sila rin naka-enjoy or naka-benefit sa agricultural or development in the agricultural sector. Okay, so that's all about for the agricultural development in poor countries. So next, we will tackle about the next topic, which is the agricultural development in rich countries. So interesting gyapon ni siya no kay atong ma-compare og unsay kalahian sa agricultural development in poor countries and in rich countries. So, in achieving a level of agricultural development, money, machines, and technology are not enough. Proper political, social, and cultural institutions are needed. So the highly developed countries have been successful in their agricultural development programs because they have been equipped with proper institutions. Muni ang kalahian di ay. Muni ang nakapa-advantage sa rich countries kay tungod sa proper political, social, and cultural institutions nga ilahang gi-apply. So, next. Countries like the United States, Australia, and Canada started with scarce populations and abundant agricultural lands. So, meaning to say, ang mga countries sa United States, no, naa sila'y gamay ra ilahang populations, but they are abundant of agricultural lands. So these were obviously natural advantages for any agricultural development. So, but there are also many countries with similar favorable conditions, and yet until now they are still less developed countries. On the other hand, like Japan, Israel, and some other countries have very limited areas for agricultural and have bad climate, but they have been able to conquer such natural barriers and attain great progress in agriculture. Evidently, the determining factor is not necessarily land nor population. So kaning Japan o Israel, bisan pa sila, belong sila sa less developed countries, but they have still managed ang sa ilang agricultural needs. No, because of they want to have a progress. They find solutions even though nasa bad climate. They find ways on how to gain progress in terms of agricultural farming. So, in the case of the United States, Canada, and Australia, they became successful in their agricultural development through high capital labor ratios, optimum size individual farm units, and high rates of savings. So, with their conditions, a larger population was favorable. Thus, large-scale immigration was encouraged to accelerate the pace of agricultural development. So kani mo say immigration o large-scale immigration, so daghan kaayo ang mga ni-migrate ato kintahay sa United States, ato sila ang mga people, like for example sa Philippines, ato sila manirahan sa United States ba or sa Canada or Australia permanently. So ato sila, so we say immigration of these are the permanent residents. Basically, this paved the way for the modernization of their agriculture. So even at the beginning, such countries had produced surplus foods and raw materials. These were marketed to the industrial countries like England and Western Europe. So kaning mga gipang produce sila mga surplus foods and raw materials no sa United States ba. So ilahan na nilang marketed to other industrial countries. So such countries, no, kaning England and Western Europe's, such countries were the first to attain industrialization because of the Industrial Revolution. When we say Industrial Revolution, it is a time of great growth in technologies and inventions, mga machines. And they were the earliest colonial masters. So kaning England and mga ni Western Europe, they were the colonizer, no? They were the earliest colonial masters. In fact, the United States was a colony of several European nations. So meaning to say, Canadian United States, they were being colonized also no by the European nations. So that's all for the agricultural development in rich countries. And now let us move on to another topic which entitled Presence of Essential Institutions. So the United States is the leader of the industrial countries. It is also the biggest agricultural economy. So kaning United States, they are the leader of industrial countries, and at the same time, they have the biggest agricultural economy. It exports both industrial and agricultural products to the world markets. We say industrial products like mga technologies, machines, and agricultural products, mo to ang mga fruits, vegetables, mga raise katong animals ba, mga meat, and whatsoever. In fact, it is even sells weight to its greatest enemy, the Soviet Union. Muna ni ang belong sa Asia ning Soviet Union. So kay Soviet Union mo na apil ng mga Russia, Turkmenistan, mga stan nga countries. So in addition to its rich natural resources, vast agricultural land, and scarce population, it had no political instability and feudal problems in the past. So meaning to say, bisan pa sa ilang past na wala sila issues or wala sila problema sa in terms of political, no? Political stability and feudal problems. So European settlers brought with them their skills, knowledge, and favorable values. So kaning mga European settlers, sila din nagdala og mga skills, knowledge, and favorable values sa United States. So there were also a good and honest government. Unlike sa other countries, no, like for example in sa Philippines, the government, no, not all government, no, but mostly there are dishonesty in terms of political matters. So, all these combined factors help in the successful agricultural development of the United States. Yes, kaning mga factors, muna sila ang nakatabang sa agricultural development of the United States. In contrast, Brazil, despite its rich natural resources, abundant agricultural lands, and few people, have not achieved a high level of growth. Nga naman, nga wala man sila naka-achieve ang mga Brazilian. Because the reason is that the country is composed of large commercial plantations with primitive agricultural practices. When we say commercial plantation, it is mainly done for commercial purposes. So it is a large investment with the help of modern machinery or the huge production to sell in the market. But sa Brazil, ang nakalahi sa ilaha, nagamit gabon sila primitive agricultural practices katong mga traditional nga practices, no, dili na tong modern nga agricultural practices. Mo to ilahang mo to rason na wala nila na-achieve ang high level of growth sa Brazil even though they have an abundant agricultural lands or nas pa sila mga natural resources. And the government has neglected to pursue social investments such as education and transportation. So meaning to say, no, ang government sa Brazil nagpabaya, no, in terms of i-pursue ang social investment like sa education and transportation, wala nila gi pursue to nga importante to siya nga matters. By that, likewise, the socio-political structure of Brazil favors the big landlords and not the small farmers. So, mas ang mga socio-political structure of Brazil, mas ni-favor pa sila sa mga landlords, katong mga owners of mga agricultural land, kaysa sa mga small farmers. So, luoy kaayo ang mga farmers, mas maapektuhan sila. So this is also the situation in Argentina. It started with a more progressive agriculture, but its economic development has been delayed by its agriculturally based oligarchic socio-political structure. When you say oligarchic, it is a rule of a few, no? Ruled by a few people, no? Mga with power. The lesson of development are clear and simple. As long as the socio-economic and political structure of the country benefits only the elite and few foreign capitalists, real development cannot be attained. Yes, it's true. Kay ang mga elite or katong mga people with ni mga powers, no, and katong foreign capitalists, they only benefited, no, the country, and the real development cannot be attained. Yes. So, for it is the development of the masses that constitute real development of the country, not the progress of those few who are already very rich. So, that's all for my report.
Good day, everyone. I am Ina Kagas, and For my part, I will report the agriculture foundation of the national economy, the specific contributions of agriculture, Taiwan case, and Taiwan today. So let's start with agriculture foundation of the national economy. So before the discovery of agriculture, there is no such thing as a permanent communities in a town organizations or formal organizations. Primitive people are like a wild beast who are roaming around in the wilderness, in the forest, in other areas in search for food. So clearly, in those circumstances, we can conclude that it is hard to make progress of their economy as well as their livelihood. So, with the introduction of agriculture, stable societies have been formed, and eventually formal and enduring institutions have been developed to help man in attaining his economic, social, political, and cultural aspirations. So, ancient people realized the advantage of an exchange economy. So, they realize this advantage of an exchange economy because they see that as more products develop and as more products or agricultural products were produced, so they kanang encourage or they make an advantage from an exchange economy. So thus trade and develop and this further improve the economy of the ancient world. So agriculture is responsible for the economic progress of the great ancient civilizations of Greece, Babylonia, Egypt, and Rome. So, we all know that in our prerequisite knowledge that great ancient civilization starts in Greece, Egypt, and the reason behind that is that kanang they have the kanang fertile soil, they have the kanang great source of water in kanang kuan sa katong mga rivers like katong Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, then katong unsa patong uban nga mga kanang kuan great rivers. So Orville Freeman, former United States Secretary of Agriculture, said that no country, with the exception of a few city-states, has ever prospered and built a sound economy without a solid agricultural base. So, from this statement, in my own perspective, the meaning of this kanang statement is that no country or such a there is no rich or poor countries, industrial countries that prospered or improved their economic or having their economic progress without the help of agriculture. So agricultural countries are eager to industrialize their economies because the industrial countries are rich. So therefore, the industrial countries are eager to make progress because they have the rich resources like kanang they have money to build machine or to export machines that can help in producing their products in an easier way. So industrial countries were formerly agricultural countries. So basically, those industrial countries are also agricultural countries because before they start with the agricultural economy after that they become an industrialized economies because kanang kuan they discovered and invent machines that can easily produce their products. So they had developed their agriculture, which later on served as the springboard for industrialization. So this is correct if they have a well-developed agricultural base. So countries that have neglected their agriculture are now suffering from serious economic problems. So those countries who are neglected or decline the advantage of agriculture, or doing of agriculture, develop a develop a serious economic problems, like their peoples are starving, especially when the bad storm or bad weather strikes their farm. So it will adapt the economic problem. So basically the people will starve kay wa man sila makaon, kay ang imbis ang ilang source of food mawala. It's because mao lang to ilahang nang gidalang pana nila sa ilahang source, sa ilang pagkaon adlaw-adlaw, sa ilang income. So if mawala pa to, so basically ang effect is ang mga tao is gutumon, ang mga tao is way trabaho, so magunsa na lang sila. So agricultural development, in contrast to industrial development, requires a simpler technology. So in agricultural development daw, it only needs a simpler technology, unlike sa industrial development. Kay when we say industrial development, those ang gagamit na nila ato sa mga high-tech machines, they do that para mas ma-easy ang ilang pag-produce ilang products, like that. So less developed countries are more effective in pursuing a program of agricultural development, considering the nature of their available resources. So moreover, most people in said countries depend on agriculture for their employment and income. Once agricultural sector has been developed, economic and social conditions in the rural areas as well as in other sectors of the economy invariably improve. So it is being said that if the agricultural sector is developed, so the economy and the social conditions of the areas, specifically in rural areas as well as in the other sectors of the economy, is having an progress. A substantial increase in the purchasing power in the countryside results to more consumption of goods and services. This stimulates more production from the manufacturing sector. So hence, industrialization follows smoothly and naturally. So raw materials are available, food supplies are sufficient, and local markets are expanding. So clearly, agricultural development blazes the trail towards industrialization. So just like I said a while ago that agricultural development has a connection to industrialization, and it is essential for industrialization. So now, we will move on to the specific contributions of agriculture. So first is modern agriculture supplies raw materials to the industrial sector and foodstuffs to the urban population. The second is with higher agricultural productivity, people in the agricultural sector get higher income. So this increases ability to produce more products. If there is a high productivity, so therefore the products, there are more products that will be produced. So such favorable conditions maka-attract jud mga investments, and it can increase in the industrial sector. So as a result, if there is higher productivity and it can attract more investment, so there is more employment, production, and the income will be generated. So this will increase the consumption level, and so with investment. So the third is when agriculture applies efficiently modern machines and technology, it is capable of releasing a portion of its labor force for employment in the industrial sector and in commercial enterprises. So So these kanang specific contributions of agriculture is the trend in the mostly in the industrial countries. So like in Japan, there has been a great exodus of people from the rural areas to the cities. So fourth is an agricultural economy earns more foreign exchange like dollars by exporting more agricultural products. So this is made possible lang if ang agricultural production increases or when productivity improves. So this number 4 contributions of agriculture is possible lang siya if there is a improvement of production as well as in agricultural production. So a less developed countries is always in need of foreign exchange for importing machines for its development programs. So the fifth is in improving the economic performance of agriculture, more jobs are created. So 'di ba if ma-improve ang isa ka economy, they have a higher income, so they can produce more jobs, more employment for their people. This so if it will happen, it reduces the economic and social problems, especially in rural areas which are widespread now. So such improved situation diminishes the movement of rural folks to the city. So ang mga tao dili na mamalhin sa laing lugar in search for employment or other nga need nila. It's because makuha na nila sa ilahang society or community with the help of kanang higher income in agriculture. Thus, urban problems like slums, traffic congestions, unemployment, and squalor are not further aggravated. So the last is a sustained agricultural development provides a more balanced economic development once a country has attained full industrialization. So if they can fully attain the agricultural development, so it can lead to industrialization. So a great example for this is the country of United States. We all know that it is the most high tech. They have high tech machines, they have a generated greater economic progress, economic income. So therefore it is easy for them to buy machines, and so with that dali ra sa ilaha nga mahimong industrialized countries. So the United States is a highly industrialized economy, but it has not neglected its agriculture. It has pampered the farmers with incentives so that they will not leave their farms. So sa United States, ang ilahang way is that bisan pa og industrialized country na sila, wala gyapon nila gineglect or kalimtan ang importansya sa agriculture sa ilaha. And in order for their farmers nga di bitaw nila biyaan ilahang mga gipanghimo nga mga yuta, di give incentives para sa mga farmers. So since nahumana naman ta sa specific contributions of agriculture, we will move on to the Taiwan case. So I know that sa Taiwan case is not dili lang mo karon makadungog anhits because I believe nga naani si sa na topic ni siya sa atong isa ka subject, which is the Asian studies. So sa katong the aborigines of Taiwan sa una pa di ba, we all know that primitive people katong sa mga sinaunang tao pa is they depend on hunting, fishing, and primitive agriculture for their livelihood. So with the arrivals of the Dutch, then the Chinese, and later on the Japanese, the Taiwanese retreated to mountains. So since nga daghan may nangabot nga mga foreign people sa ilahang lugar, they retreated to mountains. So ni kuan sila murag nagtago sila or wa sila dadto sila sa kanang mga bukid-bukid nga namuyo. So Taiwan has only 5 towns with an area of 13,884 square miles, or about one-third of the area of Virginia, United States. So, it has an abundant rainfall, but this is not evenly distributed. So, the Portuguese discovered the island and called it Formosa, which means beautiful. So, ang una nga naka-discover sa Taiwan is ang Portuguese. So, note that one. Ang una nga naka-discover sa Taiwan is ang Portuguese and they call it Formosa, which means beautiful. So, the next colonial masters to occupy the island were the Dutch. They developed it for their own economic interests. Their success in Taiwan became known to the Spanish colonial administrators in Manila, so they sent an expedition to the northern part of Taiwan in 1626, which was not yet occupied by the Dutch then. So, some years later, they were driven away by the Dutch. So, the Dutch ruled the island for 38 years through the Dutch East India Company. They helped the Aborigines organize their own local government and develop their primitive agriculture. They encouraged immigration from mainland China to assist the expansion of agriculture. So, di ba ang first nga ni-adapt sa kanang Taiwan is ang Portuguese. So, they were driven by the Dutch. So, the next ruler is the Dutch. So, basically, in this statement, the Dutch, kanang kuan lang, they help the people in Taiwan for their own interest. Mura bagi kanang gikuan sila, kanang gipataas nila ang katong mga Aborigines kay pero anha di ay is ang nade laing plano ang mga Dutch. So, they encourage immigration from mainland China to assist the expansion of agriculture. So, Taiwan became a trading center. Trading center sa katong ang mga Dutch na ang ni-rule. So these four statements describes or implies the Dutch on their kanang own interest sa kanang island. So the first is Dutch East India Company made huge profits. So bisag ang Taiwan ang kanang nahimo nga trading center, ang mga Dutch gihapon ang nagrule and kanang they are the one who made huge profits instead of kanang daw Taiwanese people. So second is Dutch Protestant missionaries Christianized the Aborigines. So gikuan nila kanang what do you call that, kanang gi-affect or gi-encourage or like kanang gikuan ilang pananampalataya bitaw nga ang mga Taiwanese people or ay the Aborigines or is kanang makuan sa ilang religion. So the third is establish schools where the Dutch language and religion were taught. So maski sa di lang sa ilahang economy, di lang sa ilahang kanang religion, maski pod sa ilahang education sa mga kanang mga tao adto sa Taiwan, namely the Aborigines, kuan gyapon kanang nag-eskwela pero ang gitudlo nga kanang mga language o religion is ang katong sa gikan sa Dutch. So last one is some of the Aborigines were sent to Holland to study the Protestant religion. So no kanang wa pa sila ni stop adto nga ilahan ng economy, ilahan ng religion, ilahan ng education, ang ilang kuan, pero nagkuan pa jud sila kanang nag-send pa sila ubang mga Aborigines sa kanang school sa foreign school kay para lang matutunan nila ilahang Protestant religion. The Dutch rule ended in 1661. So the Chinese drove them away. So ang Dutch is kay ilang pag-ruled sa kanang Taiwan na-end na siya in 1661, and the reason behind that is that the Chinese drove them away. So in 1895, Chinese gave Taiwan to Japan as a result of the Sino-Japanese War. So sa kaning Sino-Japanese War, it's between kanang sa Chinese ni og sa kanang sa mga Japan nga ilang military people, and since katong sa pagkuan nila kanang nay pag-away nila, ang nidaog is ang Japan, so silbi ang murag trade nilang sa mga Chinese is ang Taiwan. So after World War I, the island became a province of China. Few years later, Chinese government was toppled down by the Chinese Revolution led by Mao Zedong. They defeated government, and its followers fled to Taiwan. This is now the present Republic of China. So kani si Mao Zedong, mao ni siya ang leader sa Chinese kanang katong sa Chinese Revolution, siya ang leader anhi, and kanang kuan nila kanang the Chinese government is kanang gitapple down bitaw nila, and they defeated the government and its followers katong kanang nibalhin sila sa Taiwan. So kaning Taiwan is now called as Republic of China. So since the Dutch colonial rule in 1624 and until 1948, the farmers of Taiwan were exploited by their landlords. Their land reform program, which started in 1949 up to 1953, paved the way for the progress of Taiwan. In addition, cooperatives, liberal credit, and modern agricultural technology have greatly elevated the economic and social conditions of the farmers. So, Taiwan's agricultural development program, particularly its land reform, became famous. It is being emulated by many third world countries, including the Philippines. So, the Taiwan's agricultural development program is kanang particularly it's katong sa ilang land reform became famous around the world. So ang kuan kanang na-adapt ni siya sa kanang mga third world countries or the less developed countries, including our country, Philippines. So Taiwan today, many times kanang there di ba ang ni colonize nila kay ang una is ang mga Portuguese, second is the Dutch, then ang third is ang kanang Chinese na. So despite those kanang many times na sila nga githreaten og kanang invasions, especially from mainland China, it is not even recognized as a nation by most country of the world. So noloy kayo ang Taiwan kay kanang wala sila na recognize bitaw sa tibuok kalibutan nga naa sila nag-exist as a nation. So the little island has not only survived but it has even flourished. So despite those kanang naagian nila nga sa ilang journey nga kuan sila daghay mga ni-invade nila nga kanang mga foreign kanang invaders, they also suffer in mainland China, pero despite ni survive gihapon ang ilahang nation, and they even flourished, they improve, they gained economic progress. So nice kayo paminaw nga despite sa ilahang hardship nga naagian, nakakonquer sila sa ilahang progress. So Taiwan has a population of more than 18 million with a per capita income of $2,310. In Asia, only Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore surpass its record. So, no? Kanang nay, lami ni mo palandungon ba nga kanang ingana nga nakakuan sila naka tindog sila ba nga sa ilahang mga kaagi nakatindog sila di make progress kanang nice sila nga kuan ba role model sila nga nation kay kuan kanang they kanang gipakita nila nga angay sila ma-recognize as a nation and they can do progress kanang despite sa ilang mga naagian. So the poorest countries in the world have per capita incomes of even less than $100 per annum. So the economic miracle in the little island came from a sound agricultural base. So kaning sa katong di ba mahimo na to makuha na to nga mahuna na to nga miracle jud nga maka-survive sila and maka-flourish sila sa make progress sa ilahang nation pero help day pud to sa kanang ilahang agricultural base maybe they focused on their agricultural development and so that adto ni improve ilahang kanang panginabuhi ilang economy. Wang Tzu yung a professor of economics in Taipei stated that they built a good agricultural base to improve the income of the farmers and liberate farm labor for the cities, and they developed industry that could make products that were previously imported such as textiles and fertilizers. So according to Wang Tzu yung daw the economic miracle of the little island Taiwan, it's because they have a great foundation. They built the good agricultural base to help or to improve the income of their farmers, of their people, and liberate farm labor for the cities, and para maiwasan nga ang mga tao sa ilang communities is mobalhin sa kanang mga syudad para mangita og trabaho and develop industry nga makahimo sa ilang product nga ma-import sa kanang mga communities, laing countries, and with that they gained so much income, so they made greater progress rather. Taiwan farmers work on an average of 2 acres. The other areas are steppe, forested mountains. Their troops and weapons are located underground. This was food production has more than doubled as a result of technical assistance and credit and land protection. This was accomplished in spite of the small land area of Taiwan and less than 1/3 of its cultivable. So bisan pa o kanang gamay ra ang yuta nga makultivitan nila sa ilang mga kanang crops, wa gihapon na nahimong hadlang para kanang mga tao is kanang makahimo og progress and to be known and to be famous in the world, and we even adapt that kwan in the Philippines. So even with the growth of the industries, many people from the rural areas go to the cities. So, people of Taiwan enjoy a high standard of living. They have a modern lifestyle. So, these 6 statements, it describes nganong giingon nga ang people Taiwan enjoy a high standard of living and they have a modern lifestyle. So first is that people have money and plenty to eat. So can you imagine that nga ang mga tao daw kuno is daghang kwarta and they have daghan sila og kuan what do you call that kuan sila ba daghan sila pagkaon and siksik liglig ang ilang mga biyaya nga naa sa ilaha, and those who live in the remotest villages have television sets. So high tech na kayo nga bisan pag sa katong nay mga squalor areas or katong mga kanang mga tao nga kanang feel nimo nga kanang murag bitog way kaya pero na sila yung mga television sets. Office buildings are high rises and apartment complexes are increasing. In cities, motorcycles and automobiles make the traffic heavy. Men wear silk skirts and Swiss watches, and women squeeze into tight jeans. So, like in all other successful nations, the principal key behind Taiwan's progress is the quality of its people. The pride, patriotism, and determination have achieved the economic victory of the little island state. Its people work hard and sacrifice for the good of their country. So, swerte kayo ang Taiwan sa ilahang mga tao. Their people are they are having a determination. They have the pride nga gusto nila ilahang. They have the goal to achieve kanang economic victory despite sa ilahang pagkagamay nga island, pagkagamay nga kanang kanang agricultural land para makultivitan nila. Wala to nahimong hadlang. It's because kanang their people are kanang having goal or determined to help their country. They work hard, they sacrifice to gain the good for their economy kanang at this in the past and up to the present. So ang Taiwan jud is ang grabe gyud kay kuan siya kanang despite sa iyang pagkagamay ng kapila nagi-invade, they kanang nakaagis ng mga sufferings, hardships, but they even survive and they even flourished and they make progress, and with that kanang makakonclude ta nga ang Taiwan is a kanang good role model nga angay gayahon og unsa ilang mga strategies nga gihimo sa ubahang countries para maka make pod og progress. So I believe that's the end of my part in the report. So thank you for listening.
The Russian experience. Among the great industrial countries, Russia was still an agricultural economy in the early 1900s. Nevertheless, there were efforts to industrialize the Russian economy by Peter the Great during the late 1600s. So, kanang ang Russia, paansiyapan siya pag 1900s kanang agricultural economy. Tungod ni Peter the Great, tungod sa iyang effort. So, si Peter the Great, miadto siya o iyang givisit ang England and Western Europe. Nag-hire siya og foreign technician. Siya po di ay ang kanang nag-initiate the building of factories and new industries. However, the economy in general remained relatively backward. It was only in the late 1920s that massive efforts were pursued in industrializing the economy under a dictatorial government. So, ang Russia kay kuan ra siya pag 1920s ra siya nahimong industrialized economy since kanang adto nga time ang ilang government kay dictatorial. So, even though Russia was still able to demonstrate the possibility of rapid industrialization. In fact, after World War II, its annual growth rate even exceeded that of the United States. It stressed high investment, low consumption, and industrial development at the expense of agriculture. Likewise, increased scientific and technical education. So, kanang after sa World War II, ang Russia kay kanang ang lang investment kay hintaas, tas ilang consumption kay hingubos, and there is a industrial development sa agriculture. So, katong nga factors, through kana sa authoritarian central planning, nakaingon nga kanang transform ang Russia or the Soviet Union into one of the great industrial powers, but they are only second to the United States. The economic development performance of the Soviet Union was impressive. This was made possible even by a rigidly state-dominated system, meaning a command economy in contrast to the market economy of democratic states. In the Soviet Union, production and distribution of resources are determined by the government. So, ani, walay incentives like profits for the individual or private businessmen or industrialists. The Soviet state owns property resources such as land, natural resources, transportation, and communication facilities, banking system, and almost all the industries. So kanang sa Soviet state, kanang sila ang tag-iya sa kanang property resources. So most retail and wholesale enterprise and most urban housing belong to the state. So in terms of agriculture, many farms are owned by the state. Most of these farms are collective farms or cooperative farms organized by the government. A government exemption of state ownership of farmland is a small plot of land given to a collective farm family. So dire, ang kanang farmers kay free sila mo decide og unsaon pag kanang raise of fruits, vegetables, poultry, or piggery. The Russian cannot feed themselves. The Russian style of economic development has amazing link in its total scheme. It has attained tremendous progress in industry but not in agriculture and in the area of consumer goods. So, ang Russia kay naka-attain sila tremendous progress sa industry but not in agriculture kay tungod kay ang ilang development ang priority kay kanang ang gi-priority o gi-focus kay ang high investment and modern heavy industries mo nang mas nakakuha sila tremendous progress sa industry pero wala sa agriculture. So, ang result, consumption and agriculture have been adversely affected. Furthermore, the type of the Soviet Union economic system seems to work well sa industry kaysa sa agriculture. Russia before the 1917 revolution was the world's leading exporter of grain. But today, it is the largest importer of grain. Kaya mupalit po sila ng other staples like eggs and butter from Europe and also meat and wheat from Argentina. From 1951 to 1975, grain production in state and collective farm rose from 90 million metric tons to 200 million metric tons. But more than that, 2/3 of the grain production came from the use of more land, fertilizers, seeds, and tractors. So, ang rate of production sa kanang Russia kay was almost nil or almost zero. So, the cost of production of the additional output in grain was astronomical, which was equivalent to about 25% of all new investment. For the last 4 years, the Soviet Union has been suffering from poor grain harvest. Sa last 4 years, ang kanang Soviet Union kay nagsuffered sila tungod sa kanang gamay lang ilang harvest sa kanang grain. So this means more grain imports and a subsequent decrease in its hard currency reserves. The leaders of the Soviet Union have realized that their nation is crippled world power. Its agriculture is inefficient and wasteful. So kanang ang ilang agriculture kay inefficient o kanang wasteful dili kay tungod lang sa bad weather but also the cause of the repeated craft failures in the Soviet Union. They devoted their best brain power and financial resources to the industry and military instead of efficient agriculture. So that's why inefficient ang ilang agriculture. At present, the Soviet cannot even adequately feed its own people. Many Soviet farmers lack understanding in the care of farm machinery and crops. So, they have no proper roads, quality equipment, storage, and repair facilities. Many of their crops rot in the fields or are wasted in the process of transfer since lack maslag understandings and cares of farm machinery and crops. Economic system not conducive to agricultural development. The root cause of the crisis is a cumbersome and repressive system of economic management that discourages initiative and innovative and encourages inefficiency and waste. So, the failure therefore of the Russian agriculture is not the fault of the Russian farmers. So, dili jud sala sa farmers. Ang nakaingan kay kuan, lack of adequate incentive to produce. Central economic planning is not conducive to agriculture development. The latter requires flexibility and suitability to prevailing local conditions. Obviously, these are not possible in a command economy like the Soviet Union. So farmers cannot decide on what to crop, to plant, and how to plant it. Except lang sa katong na ay private plots, they are free to raise their own crops. Such farmers constitute only 1.5% of the Soviet Union's farmland. But they produce about 1/3 of the total agricultural output other than grain. This serves as a good proof that farmers are more productive if they have economic freedoms and incentives. In the United States, only 4% of the labor force works in agriculture compared with the 25% in the Soviet Union. The failures of the Soviet Union in its agricultural development have been reflected in the kind of standard of living of its people. They are faced with shortages of everything from toilet paper to well-made clothing. One or more members of an average Soviet family spend 2 hours a day mostly in line, buying food and other necessities. So, about 20% po sa urban population, nagpuyo lang sa dormitories or multi-family apartments. Then, sa rural areas, kanang about 36% of the housing kay walay kanang running water. Even their household and farm machines are old o kanang inefficient. Such depression conditions have been caused by the failure of agriculture.
Hello everyone, a pleasant day to all. I am Almira Tisinica and I am the next reporter of this group. So we have here the third world poverty and I'll be the one to discuss this topic. So in a third world poverty, there is a significant cause of the food crisis in the developing countries has been the population explosion since after World War II. So population explosion means that may paglaki ng populasyon. Kaya, nagdudulot ito ng krisis sa pagkain. Especially in developed countries or in less developed countries sa mga di kaayo or sa mga poor countries. And this was happened since after World War II. But before the war, the least developed countries in Asia, these are the countries that are naapektuhan sa war, but sa wa pa ang war, Asia, Africa, and Latin America were net exporters. These countries are the exporters of wheat, rice, and corn to the industrial countries. However, tremendous population growth after the war has reversed the situation. Gikan sa wa pa ang war, sila mo exporters sa wheat, rice, and corn sa industrial countries. Then, pagka human sa war, after sa war, nagkabaliktad ang situation. Tungod sa paglaki and pagtaas sa population, so the situation has reversed. And results to millions are now hungry in these countries, in the aforementioned regions, kaning Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And worst of all, millions of starved and malnourished people. Daghan ang gipanggutom sa aning nga mga countries, especially children, die every year. Imagine, year na ay mga children na matay tungod sa kagutom and then malnourished. Post-war government leaders of many developing countries didn't come from agricultural background, but instead from urban or military background. Kaya human naman, and kani post-war, so means after the war. So, you can conclude nga kanang this ang mga leaders na after the war, the post-war government, di na siya gikan sa agricultural background, but instead gikan na siya sa urban or di kaha sa mga military background kay nahuman naman ang war. So naay mga posibilidad, there's a possibilities nga mga military gagikan ang mga leaders sa military background. These governments leaders committed a fatal mistake by evaluating socio-economic progress in terms of the industrial West. Na sila'y mali. Through industrial development, they hope to duplicate rapidly the wealth of the industrial countries. For instance, they hastily built showcase projects like big dams, industrial plants, and urban business projects. This diverted development from where it was most needed, the rural areas where most of the poorest live. So from this sentence, the government leaders are committed a fatal mistake by evaluating socio-economic progress in terms of the industrial West. Na sila mistakes, mistake nila is because kanang nag-base sila sa progress sa ilahang socio-economic from industrial waste. Kasagaran, ilahang gamitin nga mga technology from industrial waste. Sa Western nga technology, modern technology sa Western are really expensive. Maunay problema nila, it's because they are developing countries. They cannot afford the technology. So, that is their fatal mistakes of these government leaders. So, very often,
third world governments stress the development of a few major cash crops. The reason for this is to earn more foreign exchange to finance industrial, military, and urban development projects areas where most of the poorest live. And these projects benefited only a minority of the population. Gamay ra nga population ang maka-benefit sa ani. Usually, the government's major supporting constituency. Kasagaran pa dyan ang maka-benefit ani, kay katurang mga supporting institutions sa government. So, di kaayo ang mga poor ang maka-benefit sa ani, katurang mga major supporting institutions sa governments. Mo ni ang dakong mistakes sa poor government leaders sa mga developing countries. Any nation engaged in industrial urban development, which cannot even feed its people with staple food, undercuts its growth and long-term success. So, naka-result siya into food shortages. And ang food shortages kay gamay raman ang food, nakuwangan ang food sa nation nga even dili sila kapakaon sa people nila og tarong nga mga pagkaon sa mga citizens tungod sa ni-engage sila sa industrial or urban development. Kay para nila, it's a long-term success, but results to failure. Di siya success, failure siya. And then, kay di man sila kapakaon sa ilahang mga citizens, sa people sa nation, so it means that there was food shortages. So, they must require importation, and this decreases the financial reserves of a poor country, which are greatly needed for essential development projects. Mas require sila importation kay tungod sa food shortages, but maka-decrease pud siya sa financial reserves. O tungod kay gusto man sila mo import, mukuha sila sa mga products or mga food sa laing country, sa laing nation, kay tungod sa na shortage silang country, ilang financial nga reserve nila for their country makuhaan, ma-decrease kay ilang matong ibayad sa import nga ilang gikuha, mga pagkaon nga gikuha sa ilang country, di ba? So nga needed man unta sa financial, needed man unta sa development silang country, ma-decrease na noon tungod sa importation nga mahitabo. Another is the reduced purchasing power of the many rural poor cannot afford to buy the products of their own infant industry. Such products have to be exported and subsidized in view of the stiff competition in the world market. So next, the possibilities for agricultural development. Agricultural productivity is generally low among the developing countries. By and large, farmers have second thoughts in using the modern methods of production because these are expensive, where modern agricultural technology is from Western technology, which is really expensive. From what I've mentioned earlier, nga kasagaran, all modern agricultural technology nga from Western technology, mga mahal dyan na sila. So, sa mga developing countries, ang productivity sa agricultural low lang siya tungod sa kuwangan ng mga technologies, capitals, kay they are just poor countries man. So, kuwangan dyan sila og mga kagamitan, mga kapital, So, for example, imported commercial fertilizer and pesticides have high prices. Ni kasagaran hinay low ang agricultural productivity sa developing countries kay ang mga kasagaran mo import man ang developing countries. It's because yamo just sila yung mga kagamitan mo import sila sa laing countries, mupalit sila sa laing countries. Then kana nga mga technologies is mahal pod. Mo na siya mahal kay gikan po sa Western technology nga which is really expensive. The required agricultural inputs are manufactured by Western countries. So, schumacher, a British economist, proposed intermediate technology instead for the developing countries. So, si Schumacher, kuan siya, British economist, nagpropose siya intermediate middle or kanang kaya-kaya ra, normal ra nga mga technologies, di kayo expensive, di pud kayo ingon siya brato, nga para sa mga developing countries, sa mga di kayo ka-afford, ilabi na katong mga technology nga gikan sa modern, sa mga modern agricultural technology nga gikan sa western technology nga mahal kaayo. So, siya, nagpropose siya mga technology nga makaya-kaya lang sa developing countries. Na di kayo mahal, di pud kayo brato, kanang igo-igo lang siya, normal lang siya. And this is a type of technology which is between the modern technology and primitive technology. So middle lang siya. Tunga lang siya sa modern nga technology o naa lang siya sa in between lang siya sa una nga mga technology nga gamit sa mga ancient nga mga technology from the word primitive. Diba? Sa mga sa una nga technology. Naran siya, in between lang ni siya. Kani nga technology nga gipropose ni Schumacher. So, this technology is appropriate. It's because it is less expensive and simpler than Western technology, but more efficient than primitive technology. So, di kaayo ni siya mahal, ug simple lang siya kaysa sa Western technology. Pero, dali rin siya, efficient lang siya, kaysa sa una nga technology, primitive technology. So, means na in between lang siya sa modern technology o sa primitive technology. So, the grim prediction of Malthus about food exploitation can still be averted by proper food production which is feasible for all developing countries. So, di ba sa third world countries, katong after the war, there is food shortages and population explosion tungod atong war, naay kakulangan sa pagkain and then pagtaas sa populasyon. Mo ni ang problem sa developing countries after the war. So si Malthus, mo ni prediction ni Malthus nga para masolusyonan in order to solve food shortages and population explosion, kinahanglan ang proper food production sa ilabi na especially to developing countries. And food production scientists have discovered that we have not yet reached the limits of our agricultural production. There is still a room for increasing output through more efficient utilization of the farm resources. So here are the facts. So we have here the irrigation. So I know I know all of us know the irrigation. So water is crucial to the tropical farmer. Tubig jud ang kinahanglan, labi na sa mga tropical farmer. Farmers can often build smaller earthen dams and dig irrigation ditches instead of expensive big dams. Through proper use and conservation of water, the farmers can plant 2 or 3 crops instead of only one. Then, pest. Petroleum-based chemicals are expensive and dangerous in most cases to people and the environment. So, more emphasis is therefore needed to discover natural organisms and natural chemicals that kill pests but do not destroy plants. So, kinahanglan ang mga pesticides or mga chemicals nga pangpatay sa mga peste or sa mga insects nga mukaan sa mga plants but di siya makadaot sa plants. And insects and animal pests often eat more crops than people. Mas dako daw ni kaon ni mga peste and mga insects kaysa sa mga tao. So kinahanglan jud og mga pesticides kanang papatay sa mga peste or mga insects. So present outputs in many areas can easily be increased by 30% to 50% through effective pest control. So we have here the fertilizer. Commercial fertilizers are costly, Instead, manure and compost, crop and vegetable waste could be used. May mga fertilizer nga, say for example, mga dagami. And to make compost pit is easy and cheap. Rice farmers in Asia lost as much as 90% of the fertilizer if it is spread across the top of wheat paddy. But mixing fertilizer with soil called mud ball method and packing it down to the roots of the plants reduces by 50% the amount of required fertilizer. This is also increases employment of farm workers. The next, intercropping and multi-cropping. So we have first tackle about intercropping. Intercropping is planting different kinds of crops in alternate rows. So it means nga each row has different crops. So kintahay isa ka row ang gitanom is pichay. Then lahi na pud nga row ang gitanom is tomato. So, ang lahi na pud nga row gitamnan og sili or uban pa. And so on. Muna intercropping. Kada row na ay different crops. Lahi, alternate rows. Or pwede po siya pichay, tomato. It is also called intercropping. And this is one of the cheapest methods of controlling plant diseases and pests. Each crop serves as a barrier to the spread of insect pests or plant diseases affecting the other crop. And this has been practiced for centuries by Asian farmers. Unfortunately, in recent years, Western agricultural development has been inclined to push monoculture methods of farmers. As a result, more plant diseases and pests have cropped up. Kay kani nga method di naman kaadyo siya gamiton sa mga farmers labi na karon. Kay modern technology naman ang Western agricultural development naman pod. So tungod ana ang plant there are more plant diseases and pests have cropped up. So kinahanglan magamit ang intercropping labi na nato as sa Philippines nga we are under in developing countries. So instead of magamit ang mga technology nga gikan sa Western nga mahal kaayo, mag-intercropping ta. Maka-avoid pa ta sa mga plant diseases and pests and naapatay agricultural productivity. And then we have here multi-cropping. Multi-cropping is planting more than one crop of the same kind or of various kinds during a growing season. So for example, adi para sa intercropping kani siya kintay sa isa ka row ang imong gitanom is okra. Pero kung naapay space, pwede nimo butang og talong. Then sa pikas nga na pod kung naapay butang imong kintahay tamnan og kakao. Tas kung naapay space, kung naapay lugar matamnan pa siya imong tamnan og mustasa or pichay. If ever there is a low income kintahay sa okra, pwede ka sa mubalhin ato sa lubi or di kaya sa talong nga or di kaya sa kakao nga for the lifetime. Kay kaning multi-cropping sa growing season na nian para din sa kung asa nga dako income. Kay kita ang talong gamatay ra siya income tas dali ra siya ma-harvest ang talong. But dali ra po siya madignas or mamatay. So mubalhin ta sa coconut nga for the lifetime na siya dugay siya mamatay tas okay ra dugay po siya mamunga pero for lifetime na tas dako sa dug income. And this is suitable in both tropics and subtropics due to abundance of sunshine throughout the year. Recent research shows that both intercropping and multicropping can often double production in a given piece of land. So next we have here the weeding. It is one of the most tedious jobs for farmers in developing countries. Certain leafy legumes planted with rice can reduce the incidence of weeds because without weeds, productivity increases. So weeds, kaning weeds is an unwanted plants which grow along the crops. The process of removing weeds from fields, kaning weeding. kaning ang weeds mo na mga unwanted plants nga ning tubo sa along the crops. And then ang weeding, the process of removing sa mga unwanted plants from fields. Weeding is necessary para maka-increase ang productivity sa crops. Kay kung yung may weeds, nice ang pagtubo sa mga crops. Kay kung naay weeds, naay mga unwanted plants, there's a possibilities nga magniwang or maot ang pagtubo sa crops nga gitanom. Sa ang katunong mga unwanted plants mo noy tambok no nice pagkatubo. So kinahanglan ang weeding kay para ang productivity increases ang crops nice og tubo tas dagan ang ma-harvest nato nga crops. So we have here multi-use. Fields can be rotated between planting various crops and raising livestock. Animals eat crop leftovers and at the same time fertilize the fields. So makabantay ta na farmers naa sila'y na sila crops, na sila magplant sila crops, then magbuhay pa sila mga hayop. Kay kaning mga leftover nga mga crops ni mga sobraan o kahinog, masubraan og nalata na, pwede na kanon sa animals. Then at the same time, mo fertilize with sa fields. Mo po ng kasagaran ng mga lata na mga kuan pwede po na sila himo og fertilizer. So proper rotation of crops is a good natural method to reduce pests and plant diseases. Fish farmer can also be done in irrigation canals, small ponds, and rice paddies. This does not only increase food production but also the income of the small farmers. So last we have here, and this is not the last but the second to the last, the harvesting and storage. One big shortcoming of agriculture in the developing countries is the great loss of food crops due to improper threshing, poor handling, storage, and food preservations. Kasagaran ko na mo ni ang mga mga problema sa agriculture, labi na sa mga developing countries nga naa sila mga pagbawas sa mga food crops kay tungod sa. But before that, I will be explain first what is harvesting. But I know most of us kaibaw na sa ansa na harvesting. So harvesting is the process of cutting of crops after it is matured, manually by sickle or harvester. So kaning threshing sa Bisaya, it is the process of separation of grains from the harvested crops. Kasagaran makita ni nato siya sa if mag-harvest og mga palay or mag-harvest og mga humay, di ba? Magamit ang mga thresher, napoy winnowing, kaning magpalid, the process of separating grain from chaff with the help of wind. Nay uban nga magpalid magamit og electric fan, kaya ang hangin man. So in this part, harvesting and storage, kinahanglan ni siya kay kani ang mga crops, nanay mga crops, mga daghan, mga kinahanglan dyan siya nga kung pilay ma-harvest or pilay ma-harvest ng mga crops, kinahanglan maupod hantod nga ma-distribute na siya. So kinahanglan ang proper storage, proper handling, and food preservations. Para sa last, daghan atong ma-distribute and in marketing. Mubalik sa it's back to harvesting and storage. Kay they are na examples. Grain dryers that work well for the American farmers may be useless in tropical climates. Grain bins designed for gentle prior winds are not applicable for Africa's blazing sun. Therefore, there is a need to develop the right storage facilities to fit local conditions. So, kung ansay mga conditions sa kinahanglan ang proper storage, makadepende po na siya, it depends upon the conditions or climate conditions or the situation sa ka nation or sa ka lugar. So, we have here distribution and marketing. efficient transportation is needed to reduce the spoilage of agricultural products, especially the perishables like vegetables and fruits. Good routes from the farms to the markets are necessary for prompt distribution of products to places where these are most needed. So next we have here the farmers' organizations. A good organizations combines the resources of its members, their money, skills, talents, tools, and materials in order to be able to maximize the benefits for its members. So, isa ka organization, di lang ang leader ang nga ay dako nga role. But of course, ang members sad, kinahanglan ang resources sa ka members. Not just their money, but their skills, talents, tools, and materials. With the cooperative efforts to the members in the organization, it is strength in the right direction that can promote the welfare and interests of the members. The world has many stories about successful organizations of poor workers, but unfortunately, in the less developed countries, farmers' organizations are very few and very weak. These are easily busted or exploited by powerful landlords, and even some governments discourage the formation of farmer organization. Kasagaran sa mga dako na mga tag-iyag mga yuta kay pinagsamantalahan to mga poor farmers kato mga small farmers ilang pangsamantalahan, and then even governments gi-discourage nila ang formation sa mga farmers organization kasagaran natong makit-an gamatera ang moapil aning farmers organization. In Latin America, leaders of small farmers organizations are killed, jailed, or threatened. So, pinagsamantalahan pa ang mga small farmers, ang mga farmers organization, and worst of all, ilabi na sa in Latin America, leaders sa small farmers organizations, gipang patay, gipang priso, or gipang threaten. Even in Mexico, which is legally and socially the most progressive Latin American country and the most democratic, agrarian reformers die at the hands of facenderos. Likewise, multinational corporations oppose land reform because they are the owners of big plantations. Aside from the local leaders, even church leaders are helping the exploited poor farmers. Nintabang sila sa mga pinagsamantalahan ng mga poor farmers. Munang, as a result, 119 priests ng mga 119 ng mga pari have been assassinated in recent years. Sa gipang patay kay tungod gipang tabangan na nila tong mga pinagsamantalahan ng mga poor farmers. So gipang patay sila. The miseries of peasants in Latin America and many other agricultural countries have been caused by greedy landlords. So, sa mga laog ng mga landlords, and multinational because capitalistic modernization of agriculture has been taking place. Katulad mga negosyante ng modernization. Munang gipangpatay nila itong mga small na mga poor farmers. So, this is a massive expulsion of small peasants. Na mga gipangpatalsik nila itong mga small peasants. In Mexico, very young peasants illegally cross the US border at the rate of 1.5 million a year. Mga bata pa illegally cross the US border. Even children too young to work go to Mexico City at the rate of 600,000 a year to search for jobs. Mga kasagaran mga bata pa jud ka mo ingadto sila sa Mexico City para mo trabaho. Naghanap sila og mga trabaho. Such huge movement of humanity happens in other places in Latin America. For instance, in Brazil, more than 8 million rural people wait around the urban squares to get a day's job or several days' work if they are lucky. So, kani mga tao, kani mga peasants, kani mga young children, they have no roots and future. Makaingon jud ta nga yamo sila'y kasugdanan, sila kaumaon kay naghuwat raman sila sa og trabaho bisag bata pa sila, yamo sila education, trabaho ra jud ilang gipang una kani mga children, wa di sila ka eskwela, ja swerte lang if makatrabaho sila or di kay maghuwat raman sila. So, as a result, makaingon ta na we can conclude that there is really a poverty. Poverty has been deeply rooted in the rural areas where millions of landless peasants work and live. Yamoy mga yuta nga mga slave, mga alipin. Sige ra sila trabaho, tas nanginabuhi lang sila na patrabuon lang sila sa mga lords, sa mga landlords, kay imo man sila kay ang ilaharang kuan is maka-work sila para silang survival, para makakaon mao ra na ilaha bisag imo sila land, imo sila mga juta, imo sila yuta para silang shelter. Their hunger and exploitations could have been prevented if only their governments have encouraged and assisted them in building up their organizations. Pero ang ilang kagutom o ilahang maibsan ilang kagutom, masulbad ang ilang exploitations, ilang pagkawa, ang ilang kagutom o pagsasamantala sa mga landlords, ma-prevent lang ang kagutom sa peasants, ang pagsasamantala sa mga landlord dito sa mga peasants, if ang governments have encouraged and mo-assess nila para mo building up sa ilang organization, sa ilabi na sa farmers organization, katong mga small organizations. If mo encourage ang mga government, suportaan tong mga small organizations, yan mo'y mahitabo, di sila magutman, tas di po sila pagsasamantalahan sa mga landlords, if ever gani. But unfortunately, gidiscourage sila sa governments. So, maunang nagod sa hunger and exploitations. On the contrary, not a few less developed countries even persecute leaders of the poor farmers. Di ra sa developed countries mga gipang usigin ang mga leaders sa mga pobre nga mga farmers. They are often branded as communists or subversives, yet they have done nothing except to fight for the rights of the oppressed peasants. Bisan pagwa sila gipangbuhat ng mga mali, gingnan pa sila nga communist daw sila. And ang ilaharang gi fight except to fight for the rights of the oppressed peasants. So, lastly, we have here the Dr. Dioscoro Umali, top FAO official, stated that in far too many countries, farmers' organizations are arbitrarily suppressed as subversives, but the small farmers and sharecroppers cannot survive as isolated units. They must band together with their peers if their children are to have a better life. They have a human right to organize, to petition for redress of grievances, even to strike if need be. Through the growing strength of widening of people's organizations, the people shall be helped to assume control over their own resources and means of productions. So, mo ni ang gingon ni Dr. Dioscoro Umali sa mga farmers organization. So, para makaprevent sila sa mga pagsasamantala sa mga capitalists, sa mga landlords, sa mga poor or small farmers organizations. And I hope nga nakasabot ra ang tanan sa akong report. So that's all. Thank you for listening.